I want y'all to give a hand to DJ Pro V. My hand. I also like to thank Archive Montreal, Canadian Heritage, CKUT, and Louise Burns for making this event possible. Please give them a hand. We're here today to talk to someone who's an innovator, a go-getter, a hustler. He's put over 30 years of blood, sweat, and tears into the urban scene in Montreal and Canada. He bleeds Burgundy because he's from Little Burgundy. Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, welcome the Mayor of Montreal, Mr. Rickey D.
Not bad. Thank you, Shaheed. Thank you for that. Mayor of Little Burgundy.
Oh, you're the Mayor of Little Burgundy or Montreal? Which one?
Little Burgundy. From a long time ago,
All right.
I was given that from just doing my grind and seeing where, always repping my neighborhood and where I came from, which was always very important to me because I felt like where you came from is definitely where you want to go and where you're going to end up being at. So, Little Burgundy, born and raised down there, it shaped a lot of my desires and where I wanted to be today.
Okay, cool. Now, also another very important person in your life was your grandmother.
Oh, let me even, before we even get into that,
All right.
I just want to, thank CKUT for thinking of me on this. This came as a total surprise, totally from the left field. I never thought that anybody would even consider me in that mix, and I appreciate them giving me the opportunity. I'd also like to thank my family, my wife, and my 2 kids, who have shaped me and molded me into the man that I am today, who's helped to give me the strength in order to continue to do what I do. I like to, thank those and then thank all of my friends and everything, which through the course of my conversation, you might hear a name or 2 come up in the mix.
All right. So another person that was very instrumental in your life and your upbringing was your grandmother.
That's right.
Mrs. Daly.
That's right.
From Montserrat.
That's right. I grew up in Little Burgundy. My mother was a single mom. She had me when she was 18 years old. Back in the 60s. My father happens to be Italian. My mother's from the Caribbean, so some people always wonder, what's this guy? He looks Spanish, he looks Arab, he looks this, he looks... They couldn't figure me out. I was like international, which is cool, you know what I mean? But that's where I came from. That's how I came about. I grew up down there.
Tell us the things she instilled in you, your grandmother.
Oh, well, still hard work.
All right.
She came from the Caribbean, and when she came to Canada, she came on what's called the domestic program.
Okay.
In the 1940s, late 40s, 50s, they were bringing black people from the Caribbean in order to do domestic work in the rich people's houses here in Canada. Because back then, everybody was coming off the war, there was a lot of money, a lot of white people didn't want to clean toilets, so they brought in the black folks, and she was one of them that came up. My grandfather on my mother's side also was in the Merchant Marines.
Okay.
He came up in the mid after the war was over, looking for new opportunities in order to raise his soon-to-be family.
So let's talk about basketball and music. Growing up, you were someone who loved basketball. At a young age, you carried your basketball everywhere you went. You were hanging out with guys like Michael McLean, Peter Balfour, Trevor, Wayne. You guys were playing basketball back and forth. Everywhere Rickey D went, he had his basketball. He was dribbling his basketball all over the hood.
I had 2 things.
And a ghetto blaster.
That's right.
Yeah, he had a big ghetto blaster. If you guys ever seen Spike Lee's movie, Do the Right Thing, Radio Raheem? Well, Rickey D was our version of Radio Raheem in Little Burgundy with his big goggles. He had on the basketball goggles. So how did music and basketball save you from the streets?
Well, it gave me an opportunity. I always loved music. I always loved basketball because it was the 2 vehicles that, empowered me and gave me confidence to go out there and meet people, right? Being shy, And, coming from a neighborhood like, where everybody was, basically putting Little Burgundy down and seeing that, nothing but crackhead, nothing but drug dealers, nothing but this, that, pimps, this, that. But there was also hardworking families who, took the value of education and took the value of hard work and took it to another level. And, some made it out, which I wish they would have stayed, because if you all know what Little Burgundy is today, you would see, right? You got $1 million condos down there. You got these affluent, people that moved into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I wish they would have stayed and not saw that they needed to leave the neighborhood to go elsewhere to finally say they made it.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate we didn't have that guidance, right?
Yeah, that's what happens. A lot of growing up, we didn't have a lot of mentors.
Exactly.
A lot of people showing us the way to succeed. So a lot of it was hit and miss. A lot of it was just trying to figure out what, how to make it out.
Now you mentioned it. Sorry about that. You mentioned the importance of education, and you were the first person from your family to receive a bachelor's from McGill in urban planning, right?
That's right.
All right. Give him a hand. Give him a hand. You got a bachelor's in urban planning.
Yeah. Urban systems, actually.
Urban systems.
That's what it is. Urban systems.
I have a question for you. How did that bachelor's build your confidence, and what were you planning to do with that bachelor's?
Well, when I was coming up as a teenager, trying to find myself, I got caught up in a lot of different things. Some things were good, some things were bad. Basketball and music basically kept me on the right track while I was exploring some of these negative elements out there. And by doing this, I eventually built into things, right? And you built your confidence. I was going to school. I got kicked out of one school, went to another school, and then when I came back to the original school I was at Westmount High.
Okay.
I got kicked out of Westmount High
Okay.
because I was involved in breaking into the cafeteria, and we stole a whole bunch of chocolates and chips. And then we sat up there and we moved it downstairs into a locker, and we were selling them downstairs in the basement, back to the students. They eventually figured out I was one of the guys in it. So in grade 9, they told me, okay, you can go. So we don't want you here no more. All right, cool. Went to LaSalle. Was down in LaSalle doing my thing down there. LaSalle Protestant High School. And that was just that was a trip. Because it was just a different environment, right? I grew up in how could I say, hip hop with how could I say, I don't even know what to call that music, like groups like U2 and Big Country. So I was in that kind of, I was between hip hop and
Big Country.
Yeah, the new age type thing. Yeah, I was in that alternative hip hop scene. And then when I went to LaSalle, you had the reggae crowd, you had the heavy metal crowd. I wasn't neither one of those. So it was hard for me to fit in because I didn't really understand where I belonged in that situation.
Okay.
So I went there. I did a year and a half, or 2 years. Failed French. I was really bad in French.
Like a lot of people.
But I failed French. I went back to Westmount High, and that's when I really started to change my life. And I went there, and there was a teacher there. His name was Garvin Jeffers. He was,
Mr. Jeffers.
Yeah, he was in charge of the Black History, and he was also a teacher in mathematics. And he signed a paper for me,
Nice.
basically saying that if I messed up, it was his name on the line. So that's when I decided to change my life, and that's when I became like your basketball coach, Vince, and then I was doing technical drawing. I was playing basketball too, and it just gave me confidence, right? And I went from a guy who couldn't achieve anything, I couldn't even finish a season before that, to where I started to accomplish things. And that gave me the confidence.
And you also won a national championship with Dawson College.
Yeah. I won provincial championships with the team I was with at Westmount High. Then I went to Dawson. I won AA championship provincial, and then won the national championship in the AAA basketball.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about the influence Little Burgundy had in the 80s in the music scene, because Little Burgundy was a big hub for urban music. Everyone from the South Shore, West Island, NDG, LaSalle were hanging in Little Burgundy. You had guys like Prince Charles, The Wizard of Oz, Kickin' Fabian Ash, Dr. Jam. They were like the front DJs back then. Describe to us that whole music scene in Little Burgundy and how it really grasped you.
Okay, well, during that time, I was influenced from a lot of people. And one of them's in the room, Butcher T.
Okay.
Butcher T's mother used to own a hair salon downtown.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So I used to go by and check him out. He was always hanging in Burgundy, and he was my dude. So him, guys like DJ Ray, who ended up being, a reggae artist, but started off in hip hop. Them two guys started doing Club 980 with Mike Williams. So they had the first urban radio show in Canada.
Wow.
So, and during that time, I was going with my mother and with some of my friends, and we were going down to New York for Labor Day, picking up the music, picking up the energy, buying records, 7 inches, and playing them, and getting to know hip hop. So, I was always hanging around. I was always around it, right? I couldn't dance, I couldn't rap, I couldn't sing, couldn't do any of that. I tried.
You are a stiff dancer.
And all my friends were like, how could I say it? They were into that. So I wanted to be involved in this. How am I going to get in this business, How am I going to do this? So I decided I was going to go more to the business side of things.
Okay.
And, and started to hand out flyers and get to know people all across the city. I was one of the first guys to start to go and, do the handing out at the movie theaters. Mm-hmm. Back then, Little Burgundy, among other neighborhoods, NDG, LaSalle, Cotonage, we were the guys, and the ladies also, the girls too, that brought hip-hop into Montreal.
True.
There was guys that were older than me that were, there. Unfortunately, they're no longer here anymore doing their thing. They either passed away, or they, went on to other things, moved away, or they just moved away from the music itself, right? Some have managed to continue and are still relevant to a certain degree, but most of them faded away. But these were the neighborhoods. There was about 4 or 5 neighborhoods where the music was being played in the dance halls. And back then, black and white kids were coming together because if you wanted to get this music, you had to come into these neighborhoods to get them. It wasn't as convenient as coming up here or going anywhere else in the east, or Laval, South Shore, a bit in the South Shore. They had, the South Shore Black Community Center down there. They were doing some things down there. Yeah, so, Donald D, that is. He was around back then, too, doing this thing. So that, all these neighborhoods, along with Little Burgundy, were critical in helping the music to get out there. They were the first ones to take it into the neighborhoods and embrace it.
Okay. Let's talk about you becoming a party promoter. You started handing out flyers. What was your first party that you promoted? And how much money did you make?
Well, wow. My first party I promoted, I was about 16, 17 years old. I was very tall for my age back then, so I used to sneak into the clubs.
He's the same height as he was at 16.
Right, but back then I was slim, I looked tall, and I was able to, and then I had a lot of older friends who worked the nightclubs as security. So they would let me in, even though they knew I was underage. And I got an opportunity to be, I was a little bit more advanced than those at my age were at that time. So I was going into the clubs. My best friend at that time was a guy named Fabian. And he lived in the same city housing that I lived in. He lived upstairs with me. And he was a DJ. And he had a partner named Fitz. But Fabian didn't want to hand out flyers. He wasn't handing out no flyers. No, he wasn't handing out no flyers.
Fabian was a star back then.
He just wanted to do his thing, and go up there and DJ and get the girls and all of that. And that was my introduction to it.
Okay.
So I started handing out flyers for these guys, doing my thing.
And they were called Fitz and Fabian back then.
Right. They were called Fitz and Fabian. And they were like the downtown promoters. You know,
Okay.
everybody. Keith and Karen was NDG, Spec 2,
Okay.
NDG. And then you had other people from other neighborhoods doing their thing. So they were the downtown promoters. They basically controlled downtown in terms of St. Catherine, around De La Montagne, Crescent, in those areas. Because back then, hip-hop wasn't being played there. It was dance, it was house. The only time you would hear this music was on long weekends or holidays, where the clubs would allow us to go in and rent their spot and do our thing. So that's how it all began. So I was handing out flyers.
Name some clubs from us.
Oh man, it's just Monsard was one. PJ's was another. Butcher T used to play at PJ's, so we used to get that place. It was the Rendezvous, Twilight Zone. There's just
these were on St. Catherine?
Around that area. Some of them were on St. Catherine. Rendezvous was on St. Catherine. PJ's was on Peel Street. There was, wow, I can't remember all of them. I can't remember all of them.
There's Checkers too, right?
Yeah, Checkers were starting to come around in the mid-'80s. They were coming around, but they were more towards the plateau. They were on Mount Royal and Park Avenue. They were there, across the street from the gas station.
Okay. So when did you do your own Rickey D party? Was that at Rockefeller's?
Well, what happened is that I was, handing out flyers for these guys, becoming very successful at what I was doing. And people were recognizing me for my work. They actually thought I was either Fabian or Fitz because that's how good I was. I was sitting on the movie theaters, I was walking up and down St. Catherine, handing out flyers, going to all the parties, all the hip-hop parties, giving out the R&B, the reggae parties, just giving them out.
Working hard,
just building and building. Because back then, there was no internet. You had to get out and put your name in the game. That's how it worked. And that's how it's always going to work as far as I'm concerned. But you had to put the work in. So I would go to all these places, do my thing. I eventually started getting popular. I wasn't making any money back then because I was getting paid $100 by Fitz and Fabian. And they were making a lot of money doing this. But it didn't matter. I was happy. I had a sense of belonging, which was important for me coming up as a teenager, to be involved in something successful. So for me, the money wasn't important. It was more of the accomplishment of being involved in something and building my confidence that, hey, maybe this light-skinned boy from Little Burgundy can do something. It's not like, oh, well, you ain't meant to do nothing. You ain't shit. Relax. You know what I mean? Go in your corner, smoke some weed, get high, forget the world. That's what it's about. And I said, maybe I can do this thing. So eventually, guys like Gary T came to me. Gary T was a critical guy, him and a guy named Ronnie Love, because they saw my talent and they saw my abilities to do this. And they decided that they were going to give me an opportunity. They said, hey, you're filling up these rooms, because they knew who was filling up the rooms, right? The parties and everything else.
Who, Rickey D?
I was one of the guys that was instrumental in doing that. I wasn't the only guy, but I was one of the key guys. So they sat up there and they said, hey, well, why don't you, come and work with me?
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, cool. So in about 85, 86, it's blurry. I think it's more 86, but it could be 85. Gary invited me to do Run DMC.
Okay.
So I'm like, he said,
you're a partner there, or you're just
no, I'm a partner. I'm a partner in this. He recognized what I had to deliver. So he came to me and he basically said, you got a few dollars? Come on. So I said to him, I don't really have any money because I was only getting $100 a party, right? So I had, basically $100, even though it was a little bit more than what it is today. Still wasn't enough to get me in the game alone. So he basically fronted the money for me.
Okay.
And said, don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. You just go out there and do you. Go out there and grind it.
Yeah.
So I went to work. So we did this. It was a snowstorm. Run DMC, we never thought we were doing that 1234 nightclub, which is now La Sank, but 1234. We didn't think these guys were going to make it. Like, imagine, back then you had no cell phones, you had nothing, right? Once they left New York,
Prayed.
you just waited to see them.
Yeah.
Because, you couldn't call them on the phone. Yo, where you at? Where you at? They'll text you, none of that, right? So we're sitting there, it's a snowstorm, heavy. We're like, man, are they coming? Place is packed. So we're like, fuck, it's going to be a riot up in here if they don't show up. So now 12:31, 1 o'clock comes, guess who shows up?
Run
DMC. They came in there, they ripped it up. It was off the chain. It was bananas. I couldn't believe how live it was. So then that was over. Then we all went to Harvey's afterwards. Took Run DMC to Harvey's, right? There used to be one on the corner of St. Catherine and Drummond. And, we brought them there afterwards. And all the hanger-ons came out, hung out. And that was basically my first taste of doing hip-hop. And then another guy came to me named Ronnie Love. He said, man, I just saw what you just did with, Gary T. Would you like to do this girl named Sybil who sings this song called Don't Make Me Over? Don't Make Me Over. Anyway, that was a big record back then, right? She was a British girl, heavy set, big girl. And we did it at the Metropolis, sold it out.
Wow.
And then
this is what, late 80s now?
About 87.
Okay.
Ish, maybe around that. I'm not sure. I'm not good at timelines. But
Okay.
it's around that. And so we were there doing our thing, and she grabbed me and she wanted to make out with me, but I was terrified. Any woman that was my height, I was scared. You know what I mean? I was like, yo, you're a little too tall for me. I don't know if I can handle you. So I flew, I said, Ronnie, I gotta go, man. She's like, where's that guy? Where's that cute guy? And I'm like, Ronnie's calling me. Yo, come. I'm like, nah, gone. So, did that, brought me in, did that show there, and then, I got, it empowered me. It gave me a sense of that I could do things.
So at this time, are you still working with Fitz and Fabian, or are you on your
Yeah,
own?
I'm still working with them.
Okay.
And I'm getting frustrated with them.
Okay.
Because they're not like,
they're not paying you properly.
not paying me, not respecting my grind and not respecting my energy on that. But I still continue to work with them because I was loyal and I believed in loyalty, before I believed in money.
Now, the first time you branched on your own as a full-fledged party promoter, was that when you did Rockefellers?
No, Rockefellers, it's funny, right? But a lot of these places back in the 80s and the early 90s, I just had a knack for finding locations.
Yeah.
Because when Fabian was at home chilling with some girl or DJ and doing mixtapes, I was on the streets. I was all up in those clubs. I was looking for new locations.
Yeah.
So I was bringing them a lot of the locations, but Rockefellers was one that they did. Yeah, they did Rockefellers. I eventually, we did this party together, and it was at this warehouse. It didn't work well between us, and this was a time when I actually became a partner with them. Didn't work well. Things. So I decided that it's time for me to move on.
Okay.
So I found a partner. His name was Gilbert, and he was from Kenya.
He's a student here, right?
Yeah, he was a student. He used to have a bookstore, and he was my first partner.
That's right.
And we started doing these parties together at a place called Crystal down on Crescent Street, and it was, we were just filling it up, and that's how we did that. And then a couple of years later, he got tired of Montreal. He didn't see any real opportunities. His bookstore wasn't really working, and he decided that he was going to go to Toronto. Which then I ran into a young guy named Shaheed, and we started doing some things together. And we started building some amazing events, and we continued to do our stuff. But Shaheed wasn't into producing shows. didn't have the stomach for it. Well, I loved it. I loved the risk, and I loved to go out there and get it.
So let's talk about that. People think doing shows as a promoter is just a hobby, but there's a lot that goes into it. You got to deal with the morality squads at times, and you got to deal with the border, customs, you got to deal with management, you got to deal with the agent. Talk to us about the trials and tribulations when putting together a show, but it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work and stress.
No, it was, when we were first started doing these shows, we had no clue that there was even a border between us. We were just booking these artists on the strength of they'd be able to come true with ease. And, we ended up having some disasters where guys didn't make it true because they had criminal records. Hip-hop was always a music of, the streets. And the streets, sometimes you got people that have criminal records for whatever reasons or not, but it doesn't negate their talent and their ability to perform. But they just get caught up in some of that street life, and they're not able to get through. So, that was a major a major thing for us because we didn't really understand that. We just loved the music. We loved the vibe, we loved the energy, we loved how it brought different communities into the room together, just like we have today, Like, there's all kinds of people coming in just trying to experience, this phenomenon they call hip-hop.
So talking about criminal records and border headaches, tell us about your encounter with B.I.G., the late Biggie Smalls at the Plattsburgh border.
Well, we have so many stories like that, but what happened with that one is that my man Gary T approached me and said, "Yo, you want to do the show, Biggie Smalls?"
Yeah, he was hot back
I'm
then.
like, "No, but you know what? I didn't know he was hot."
Okay.
So I was like, "Biggie Smalls, who's that?" Oh yeah. I'm like, "No, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't know who this guy is. I'm not putting no money into it. I don't know him." He's like, "You sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure." So he decided to produce the show. He was doing it at a place called The World, which then became the Coliseum. It was on the corner of St. Catherine and Mount Cam in the Gay Village. And show sold out.
Yeah, lineup for
It
galore.
was sold out. I was like, fuck, I knew I should have won in that one. And I was like, all right, cool. So, I was just like anything, a citizen doing my thing. So then I get a phone call from Gary. And he said, "Ricky, I need you to go to the border."
This one,
They won't-
you have cell phones now, right?
I don't know if it was cell phones.
Pagers?
Yeah, pager. Or he called me at home from the name of the club back then. The name of the club back then was called The World. And he called me from there, and he told me that Biggie can't get in. Can you go and see what's going on? So what had happened to make the story, he came to Canada twice before. He went to Toronto and sold out. I didn't know this, because if I knew that, I would have jumped in. But I didn't know this, and he came to Canada. He went to Toronto. A friend of mine, we used to call him, that was his name. I didn't make it up. Just call him Tony Burnface.
Okay.
And he did the show. He had no security in the place. The people were the security. So aspiring rappers took the mic out of Biggie's hands and started freestyling. So Biggie came down with a friend. So they backed out of the door and they left, promising that the next time they come to Canada, they're going to bring their crew, their boys. So they got to the border. They got strip search. They got, you name it. Some of the band members that came, because he was going to have a band. And we're going to get deported back to Dominican Republic because there were illegals living in the U.S. These fools didn't realize you're crossing the border and you're not supposed to be going into Canada. So they were going to get deported. They brought the dogs on. They did everything. It was a mess.
You had a tour bus, right?
Yeah, the tour bus. He was at the Lacole border. So then they went to the Super 8 Motel on near Plattsburgh. So I drove down there with two girls. I said, I'm going to bring two girls down and see if we can entice them. Right? You know what I mean? Biggie, I got these girls, man. Come on, let's go. You don't need the guys. You don't need them. Just bring your own manager. We good, we good. So now we get to Super 8. I go and I speak to his road manager. Big guy, he had like a stitch just going from here from a shotgun blast, and no shirt on with heavy tattoos. I was scared out of my mind. I was like, what the hell am I dealing with here? Okay, so then we go in his room, we're talking to him. He pages the manager. The manager calls back the hotel room. I get on the phone and I basically ask the manager, you know, listen, I got some girls here. We have a sold out show. They're waiting. Canada's waiting. Come on, let's do this. She's like, I don't think Chris is going to want to go. I said, come on, let's try. Let's do this. So he said, I don't think he's going to want to go, but if you want to try, all right. So he tells the road manager. The road manager takes me to his door. Knocks on the door. Here comes Biggie. Opens the door. Big guy.
6'3".
About that tall.
Yeah.
Huge. And I saw a girl in the back had blonde hair, not realizing that was Faith Evans because she wasn't known yet, you know. And I said to him, listen, you know, I got a few girls here. He said, you know, it's sold out. Let's do this. So he looked at me basically and he said, fuck Canada. And he slammed the door in my face. So I said, all right, okay. So I go back to the room, I call the world, and I tell Gary. And I said, Gary, I'm not coming. I'm going straight home. So he was like, okay. So he put the phone down, and then they rioted, they smashed cars. It was a mess.
Yeah.
So that's as close as Biggie's ever gotten to Montreal.
So let's talk about concerts that you did that you're grateful for, that were amazing, that were beyond your expectations.
Man, I had so many that were amazing. Public Enemy was one.
Okay.
That was crazy. James Lane. Again, Gary T. He was just, you know, my life wouldn't have been the same at that time because without him, I wouldn't be who I am today. I owe a huge, you know, shout out to him.
So let's shout out Gary. Give him a hand, Gary T. Gary T.
He's not a shy guy. That's why he didn't want to come, but he gave me his blessings. Told me, oh, I'm not coming. Okay. He's not a guy who's, if he's around you, he's super fun, super energetic, but he's not a guy who's going to be on stage. He's not a guy who's like to talk on the radio. He likes to, you know, just do his grind. What did you ask me?
Oh, what were the concerts that were beyond your expectation, the great show?
Oh, The Roots.
Where was that?
I had the pleasure of doing this with District 6, which is a guy named Victor and Andre, and we did it at the Savoy in the Metropolis. It's a small room, and knew really nothing about them, knew a bit, you know. And they came and they put on one of the greatest hip hop shows I've ever seen in my life. It was like a 2-hour-long show with Black Dot and with Razel, and it was crazy, like unbelievable. And we knew right after that they were going to be a force. They were going to be a force, you know. So that was one. The Fugees was another.
That was the first time they came?
Yeah, I did them the first time with Spearhead,
Okay.
which was Michael Franti. I think it was Michael. It could have been Michael Franti and the Disposable Hypocrisy of Hip Hop. I can't remember. But then it became Spearhead, or was Spearhead with Ben Harper.
Okay.
It was these three together, and the Fugees was the opening act.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
And I remember sitting there talking to them with Wyclef and them, and with Dice B. Dice B was at a lot of those shows. I don't know why, but I always remember seeing this guy at all of them. He was just totally on it, you know. And we were just talking with them. That was a great show they did. That's when they had Vocab. Then I brought them back with them and the Roots and Goody Mob at the Metropolis. That's when they had the Score album. And they did, yeah. So we did, you know, we had that show. That show was amazing. I almost got into a fight with Lauryn Hill's manager because Lauryn Hill was very difficult. She was not easy. What happened, she told me, It was sold out. It was rammed. Back then, Metropolis didn't care about capacity. Rammed. Like over 3,000 people. Goody Mob didn't get across the border. It was the Roots, the Fugees, and then the Fugees, Wyclef brought Destiny's Child. I didn't know who Destiny's Child was. I saw these girls there with the mother and the father. They were the chaperones, but I didn't know, right? I'm like, well, why are you guys here? They're like, well, they're 16, 17 years old or 15, something like that. They were underage. And they had to have a chaperone. And that was the first time I met Destiny's Child.
Yeah, because Wyclef had produced a song for it.
Yeah, they did No, No, No.
Okay.
That was a big record back then, so he introduced them to the market. And what happened with Lauryn Hill is Lauryn told me, you can have the people go on the speakers. So I said, okay. Security, it was that packed that they had to go on the speakers. Then the manager comes to me and like says, what the hell are you doing? You're not supposed to do that. And I'm like, yo, go talk to Lauren. And he went and got into me. Obviously, he didn't go talk to her. He's terrified of her, right? So he didn't want to get that. You're fired. You know, he didn't want to hear that. So then me and him almost got into a fight. But it was a great show. That was another one.
So let's talk about your relationship with Wyclef, because you guys had a sort of like a relationship.
Yeah, in the early years, I was one of the first guys to work with Wyclef. And I did some of his private parties up here. When he came out with the Carnival album, I brought him to the Metropolis. The Metropolis after that show decided to ban all hip hop because it was so sold out. You had an extra 1,000 people outside. It always seemed like that. It was just, and people were fighting to get in because they couldn't get in because it was sold out. So they basically, by that time, Spectra, which is Andre Menard and these guys, had taken over the Metropolis.
Okay.
And I was dealing with a woman named Michelle Navarro who was not sympathetic to hip hop, as opposed to the previous owners of the Metropolis who just loved hip hop and opened the doors to us. And after that, I was basically, banned from doing any hip hop in that room for many years, many years.
Let's talk about your relationship with the Haitian community, because the Haitian community was a big part of your success.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, the Haitian community was snubbed by the English community. What attracted you to working with Haitian promoters and opening the market to the Haitian community?
Well, it came a point, right, is that in the early days of hip hop, right, you had the black and whites were all in the same room together, enjoying it. And then eventually you started to get white promoters who also loved hip hop, and they started to take that crowd away. And
mixed crowd.
They started to take more of the white crowd that loved hip hop, and they started to bring them into other rooms and showcase them there. For whatever reasons, I won't go into it, but they took them that way.
Okay.
So in order to embrace, at that time in the late 90s, this is when we started to become introduced to the Haitian community. Before that, we really didn't know them in the English, because you had the English, right, which was basically of the English Caribbean islands, the Americans, the Scotians on that side, and then you had the Haitians who represented on the French side.
Yeah.
But we didn't really know them because they were just now starting to come of age.
Okay.
And starting to come downtown, starting to participate in these events. So I saw an opportunity, being that I am biracial, and of trying to bring the different communities together, in particular that one, and bring their energy and their passion for music together with those who were already established in the market. So that's how I became involved within the Haitian community, starting to understand, appreciate their music and their passion for what they do.
But you were also one of the first English black guys to play on the Haitian basketball team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Immaculée Conception.
Yeah, I actually even played with one of the guys who ended up getting killed many years ago. He became a big mafioso guy, and and then he used to be on my team, and we used to play together. Then I was one of the first guys, English guys, to go over there because I didn't get along with the Little Burgundy coach. So I went over there and I started to play, and that further introduced me into that community and allowed me to start to meet some of my earlier Haitian friends that, you know, also brought me further into it and started to show me their community and their world.
Okay. We're going to open up the floor. Does anyone have any questions? Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? You can come use my mic if you have a question, or you can stand up and talk loud. Anyone have a question for Rickey D? Stand up and talk loud, big man.
Hey, just before I say something.
So, yeah, what's your name?
Mackie.
Hey, Mackie, how you doing?
I met you a long time ago.
All right.
Yeah, I did this thing called Tone Excel. It was a dance thing.
Okay.
And like, you told me who you were, and I didn't believe you. You're like, I interviewed Snoop Dogg and everything. I'm like, liar. I just want to say that.
I appreciate that.
How was it to get Travis Scott here? Because that was...
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about, you know, I'm just going to talk a little bit about me and how I am. And, you know, we talked a lot about the early days of hip-hop, the golden age of hip-hop. You know, I talked about some of the shows that I produced there. You know, I went on to produce shows like Massive Attack, Mochiba. I was doing a lot of the, what we called back then, the UK Soul. We were with Acid Jazz. Was another name of that. I brought people like Guru. I brought all these shows, and then I eventually, I was one of the guys who started off with a lot of the hip hop brands. So Cross Colors, Fubu, Echo, Rockaware, all of these have to pay tribute to me, and I helped establish places like City Styles was one of the early stores that I worked with.
Sports Fever.
Right. City Style started in 1988, and being that I was from Little Burgundy and downtown was a natural extension for me, I needed the place to sell my tickets for my events. So I went to City Styles at first. They used to be on Stanley Street, and they used to sell my tickets for me. And by doing that, I started bringing people into the room because we would drive everybody to these ticket outlets to buy tickets. And then from there, I went to City Styles, moved over to Crescent Street. They closed down. Then I went to Sports Fever. Some of these people here might know that place. And then from there, I helped them to build their place. Then I went to Vibes, which was another hip-hop, more fully hip-hop.
You made them a lot of money, Rickey D.
Yeah, well, you know, I was young. I didn't know what was going on, but that was cool. You know, that was just in the moment, right? Like I said, we didn't have mentors. We didn't have people that taught us how the game really works. So we ended up getting exploited in a lot of ways, being that we were young and a lot of energy. But that's life. You learn. Hopefully, as you get older now, some of you's in here, you know, try to find that advice, whether the advice works for you or not, right? So then I went from there, and I opened up a store called Off the Hook. And it was me and it was me, Perry, a guy named Perry Janis. He was from Laval, he was Greek, and I met him through Gary T. Because him and Gary T were the originators of the Public Enemy show in 1988, because Gary was putting offers in on the business of getting Public Enemy, and so was Perry. So the agent put them two guys together, which then Gary said, hey, I got this guy, he's a hot shot, he's doing this thing, Rickey D. You want to, Perry's like, okay, bring him in. He has some money, bring him in, let's do this. So then we all started doing it together. Perry had a love of hip hop, he loved the business. He didn't really go out and participate in it. He was kind of clueless on some of the artists, but he had a desire for it, which was critical. He did all the phone calls, we gave him all the intel, what was hot, what was not, what we should be doing in terms of the shows that we needed to do. So we just continued to build. We then had Off the Hook. We opened the first one in the South Shore. We brought Razal there. I did it with a guy named Harry and Perry. And Harry used to be a waiter.
Busboy.
No, Angelo was the busboy. Harry was the waiter.
No,
No, Harry was the waiter at Over the Loop. I'm telling you.
450.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, I was there. I seen it. Harry was the waiter, and Angela was the busboy. And then we did the store together.
So that's the store in the South Shore.
That's the store in the South Shore. We opened this up behind Champlain Mall. We had it for a minute. I thought it was a bad location, but I went with my guys. So we did that for a minute, and then we opened downtown, where it's at presently today. And by that time, Rhonda and them were freaking out from Vibes, Sports Fever, and Frank was freaking out because they knew the strength of me. So then we opened the store. A lot of the clothing companies didn't want to give us any clothing.
Yeah,
Why? Because, you know, these guys were putting the leverage. They knew what I was capable, and they didn't really want to see anybody of color do it, right? They didn't want any, you know, they were happy to exploit my talents and my sweat equity, but they weren't ready to pay me properly for it. So by that time I said, you know, I'm going to do this with Harry, I'm going to do this with Perry. We opened the downtown store. Angelo was the sort of like the franchisee, and he had the majority of the shares, and then we all piggybacked on the other shares. And they didn't want to sell us any clothes, so then I had a few meetings with them and went to their office, and in particular Rockaware, and I told them straight up, I said, listen, do you know where my office is? They said, where's your office? Right? So I said to them, my office is on St. Catherine Street. You know where it is on St. Catherine Street? They said, where's your office? I said, you walk up and down that street. That's my office. Okay? So while you're sleeping, I'm working. And when you're awake, I'm working. So what's up? Are you going to give me these clothes that I put in there so you guys can make that money that you're all driving around with? Or am I going to go on the streets and dog the shit out of your clothes? So what are you going to do now? You got a choice. They said, okay, you can have the clothes. So we ended up getting the clothes. You know what I mean? Like, I had to take it to that level with them because I knew where it was going. So, you know, some tried to fight us, but a lot didn't because they realized who was the guy behind it.
Okay.
So that was good. So we did the store. You know, the store was going well. We ended up opening one in the West Island. By that time, I was less interested in it. I moved on. I was just about to have my first child in 2000, and it wasn't going anywhere. And I decided to remove myself from the business, which then Harry and Angelo continued and built it into the successful brand that it is today, which I give them the respect. Perry left also, and we all moved on to other projects in our life.
So let's also continue about the entrepreneurship side of you, because at one point you also opened up a Domino's Pizza.
Right.
So what urged you to push and open up a Domino's Pizza from being a concert promoter and open up a Domino's Pizza?
Look, how it worked with me is that the key was confidence. The key was to believe in myself and everything that I did around me. And one thing led to another. I wanted to build something a little bit more solid for my family. And that's why I decided to open the Domino's. How it came about the Domino's was one day we were living in Chateauguay with my soon-to-be wife, and my son wanted to eat Domino pizza because living in Burgundy, we had Domino pizza.
Yeah, we had Domino's.
Right? So he was like, Daddy, is there any Domino's? I'm like, no, there's none. And I saw an opportunity and I moved on it. And I opened the Domino's, and you know, I had it for like 5 years, and then I sold it because you know, the recession that came about, it was very tough in Chateauguay. There's a lot of racism in Chateauguay. A lot of white people didn't want to buy from me because they saw that I was black, and when they found out that I was an owner, right? Because they don't see biracial, they just see, oh, that's a black guy. And then when they saw my family, they were like, yo, for sure, Pete, that's what he is. And then they come, right? But luckily I had Ganawagi, and the natives there, they loved me.
Shout out to the natives.
Yeah, they loved me. They ordered from me big, and they kept me alive while I tried to figure my exit plan, because I said, yo, this ain't happening. I got to get out of this. So that I built it, and I sold and got out.
Yeah.
And I had a peace of mind after. I was like,
It was a tough part of
it was cool because I learned a lot of things. I don't regret it.
It was stressful though.
It was very stressful, and when you go into those small markets like that, you got to be very careful, because if for some reason they ain't feeling you, no matter what your brand is, you're in trouble.
Let's talk about the racism and prejudice that we have in the city, being a promoter. Because at one time, if you ought to know, being a visible minority and a black person, you weren't allowed to really go into clubs on St. Laurent Street unless you knew somebody or if you hung with a crew. So, talk to us about the encounters that you had with club owners that refused to do black parties, and also were getting pressure from the police and the Rickey D club.
So at one time, what ended up happening with that is that it was really tough.
Yeah, tough.
I couldn't believe, racism, institutionalized racism and everything exists in this city. This city, as beautiful as it may be, there's not too many opportunities for black people, especially black Anglophones, in this city to excel. And this city has a bad record of taking care of their own. You go to New York, you see guys like Kool Herc. You go to New York, you see guys like Grandmaster Flash. You see all these guys who invested into this city, into New York, into hip hop, and they're taken care of.
And they get the respect.
They're taken care of, and they get the respect. Okay? Montreal, unfortunately, is a hypocritical city. You have a lot of, individuals who pretend to be your friends, but they're not your friends. They don't care about you. They don't care what you stand for. They don't care whatever. You know what I mean? They just want to see an opportunity, and that's cool. You know what I mean? I have no problems with that, right? But it's not a city that looks kindly to black entrepreneurship. It's not a city that embraces it, and you see it all the time. You can be a black owner of a business and open your doors to the public, and the public won't come in, and then you go next door and you'll see, a white person next door do their thing, and they'll be full, and you'll be wondering, well, why is that? What am I doing that they're not? So when it comes to people like Kool Herc and them, black and whites in America, it's all about what can you do for me? Exactly. How can we build and make money? How can we break bread? It's not about, well, do you look like me? Do you talk like me? Do you act like me? You find that, and it's prevalent here, and you see guys like the Gregory Charleses and of the world here who are basically pandering in order to have an identity, because they're so desperate to utilize their skills that they end up losing the true essence of themselves. And it's bad. You have to really know yourself, and you have to stand. And sometimes by doing that, you can alienate yourself, because you become maybe the hostile black man or the hostile woman, and it shouldn't be that. It's just some people are a little bit more serious about what they do as opposed to other people. And you see this every day, which shouldn't be. When you've invested so much, there should be somebody there to give you that opportunity and not ignore you. It's like that, out of mind, out of sight. And I hate to use these analogies because I see this every day, right? It's a classic example of playing basketball, and I can use that because sports is a microcosm of life. So, you're playing in a game, you're extremely talented, yet they won't give you the ball. Because when they give you the ball, you score or you make something good come out of them giving you the ball, even though you're in perfect position to help the team. So, and when they're forced to, they'll either give it to you out of that sweet zone. They'll give it to you too low, too high, to the side, to the back. So now you have to sit up there and work extra hard to make it happen. And when you do make it happen, then they discount it as a fluke. And then they sit up there and they force you to do it again and again and again and again. And then they might start passing you the ball. But if you don't buy into that, then what ends up happening, you will never get that ball. Because that's what they want to do. So either then you got to go out there and build your own team. You know, and unfortunately, you don't have a lot of venture capitalists here. They're into it like they are in America, where they will give you that shot, where guys will come and say, you know, like how Puff Daddy did it. Puff Daddy started, he was doing parties at Howard University.
Just like you.
And then he went and he found the Mary J. Bliges and all of them. Well, I knew the Mary J. Bliges. I knew the Jodeci's of then. I knew these people here in Montreal. Fortunately, there was no platform for them. And there was no opportunities in order to develop that. So what ends up happening, you become stagnated. You hit that ceiling. And you can't excel anymore. So you have to either become patient or you wait.
So you've been extremely, extremely patient. Why not take your talent to Toronto or to America?
Well, you know, first of all, it wasn't as easy to do that. Being that I was an only child, I was bounded by my fear of going to these areas and starting alone. I didn't have that kind of like strength to do that. And I'm happy I didn't, because, you know, if I would have went at that time, I wouldn't have met my future wife, I wouldn't have had my kids, and so forth. So I'm happy to have that opportunity here. Fortunately, you know, to go to Toronto now is ridiculous at my age to do that. So I do what I have to do with now to succeed, and I continue to work on my craft and find shows. Now, hip hop, you know, the golden age of hip hop was fantastic. There was a lot of amazing shows. We did a lot of amazing things. Eventually, the music started to get taken away from us. When I say us, I'm talking about those who are true to the music. And it started to become pop. To now, I can hardly even get any shows anymore, because I'm fighting the Venkos, I'm fighting the Neons of the world here, who at one time didn't want to do anything with hip hop because it was too volatile. So guys like myself took the hits, took the fights, took the stabbings, took the shots, took the losses, took the drama, cleaned up the business, got to know our people, developed relationship with the troublemakers so we can neutralize them, basically clean hip hop up. Now, hip hop is one of the most viable music genres out there right now that is dominating a lot of the charts.
Yes.
So, you know, the life of an independent promoter in this city is slowly disappearing.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, the Evenkos and the big boys. When was the first time, before Evenko there was DKD, right?
Yeah.
When was the first time that you saw them penetrating the hip-hop market?
Well, they've always dabbled with it, you know, with DKD. Back then, I remember Donald K. Donald had hired me in 1988, 89 to promote Luther Vandross at the Montreal Forum.
Okay.
We did at one time, myself, Perry, and Gary, and Alex Toby from Front Row. We had at one moment the biggest hip hop show ever in Montreal. We did it at the Bell Center.
What show was that?
It was called Massive Groove, and we did it with the Fugees, Tribe Called Quest, and Cypress Hill. And we did 11,000 people. We financed the show. Donald K. Donald didn't have anything to do with it other than he controlled the building. So, you know, that was like one of my few times I actually went into the Bell Center, Molson Center back
Expensive
then.
though.
Oh, it was super expensive. He basically took control of the show and caused us to go from an $80,000 profit, and within 24 hours of the show, we had broke even.
Crazy.
Just like that, and he didn't have the approval to do that. I remember Gary T wanted to beat up this old man. The man was walking with a key. Yeah, just leave him alone, man. Gary was going crazy in the backstage. Like, how could you go and do this without us? This, you know, it was terrible. So that was one of the times. And then just recently, Evenco's increased their presence in hip hop. They've increased it more. You know, it's business. You know, I don't blame them. You know, you have a big organization and you have a big team, and you own 3 venues, 4 venues now. Where before all you had was the Bell Center.
Now, what venues do they have now?
They own the Metropolis.
Okay.
They own Corona. They own the Bell Center, and they own Castro.
So how do you survive with all this competition?
Well, you know, good thing about me, right? I've learned to be. You know, cockroaches lasted 200 million years. So it's very hard to get rid of a guy like me, because I always find a will as long as I have the way and the desire. So I will always get something. The difference is, do I feel comfortable in taking a crumb, or should I get a slide of that bread? That's where my attitude has to adjust. I went from basically building, you know, making this beautiful cake, from I got a little piece of it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, it's messed up on that level, but it's business. You know, people have to understand it's show business, and a lot of times, you know, people do these shows, and I want to talk a bit about the shows, and how to do a show for some enterprise and promoters who want to get involved in this.
So let's talk about it. How do you put a show together?
Well, you know, the way I do it is the way I've been doing it. Things have changed now because of social media a bit, but I would look to see what artists are relevant at that time, whether they're charting, DJs are playing their records, if they're new artists. Well, you know, what impact do I think they'll have here? Back in the day, we would go to the record labels, and we would ask them, you know, how many records they sold. You know, how many vinyls, how many cassettes, how many CDs, and that would give us an indicator of if they were relevant or not.
Okay.
Then we would approach an agent, a booking agent. Okay, the booking agents are basically responsible for you to book these artists in those different markets.
So now, I know back in
Different
these
cities, you know.
back in the days before, you were dealing with booking agents more in the U.S., but now you're dealing also with Canadian booking agents, right?
Yeah, you know, the Canadian booking agents now are getting a little bit more aggressive, and you know, and a lot of the American companies now are opening up Canadian booking agencies in Toronto.
Okay.
But I don't deal a lot with them per se, unless I have to. I continue to deal with the American ones.
Okay, so once you contact the agent, what happens then?
So when I contact the agent, if they take my call, sometimes they don't even take your call. You gotta call them multiple times. So don't get discouraged if you call and you call 10 times and they don't answer. Call that 11, call that 12. Call until you get through. Eventually, you'll get to know the secretary or the assistant. They'll see, and if they like you and they like your vibe, they won't put the call through. That's the one thing about down there in the States, is that they like the underdog and they like the guy who's willing to put the work in. So even if the guy's super busy or the lady's super busy, eventually you will get through if you persevere and you're persistent. You know, persistence overcomes resistance in that business. So you need to be persistent. So once you get them, You talk to them, you ask them if this artist is about to go on tour, and do you have any plans on? Sometimes they'll reveal it to you, sometimes they won't. It all depends on what their intentions are. If they say, yeah, we are, then you ask them things like, what kind of, it's a relationship there where it can go either way, right? You can either ask them about the capacity, what do you think they can do in the room? They'll ask me, they'll try to fish out information, they'll try to get an offer from me of what I think that artist might be worth so they can try to gauge the market. Sometimes they already know what they're going to do because of the different responses, and especially if that artist has already been on tour and they've saw different reactions in the market, then they will have an idea of what they want to do here. But they want to see how you feel about that. They try to gauge off of you in order to. So then they'll look and you tell them, okay, well I think it's a $20 ticket. I think he could do 1,000 people, and then they'll look at the math and they'll say, okay, well, he's worth $10,000 in U.S. It's never in Canadian. It's always in American. Always.
You got to calculate that.
Yes, you got to calculate all of that, and that's where the business comes in. And then you have to send, if they agree and they like your offer, they send you a contract. You have to send in a 50% deposit. If you're big like a Venco, you send in 10%. But the small guys always get banged out. So and then you put your money there, and then you go out and you promote the show.
Okay.
Now, if the show doesn't work, you take an L. If you cancel the show, you lose your deposit. So you better know what you're doing.
Now, there's two ways artists make money. I know you pay them up front, a fee, but there's another way where they take a split at the door. Explain that one.
Well, it's more of a back-end deal. Let's call it a back-end deal. What happens is that as the artist gains in popularity and the agent and management becomes confident, then the deals change. Like, artists are like a stock market. I'll give you an example. Juicy J, who's 3-6 Mafia, won a Grammy a couple of years ago, brought him here to Montreal for $5,000. 6 months later, he was $45,000.
Because he won the Grammy.
No, he didn't win no Grammy. That was way back.
Okay.
This is like, that was before, that was way after the Grammys and all of that. Okay. But that's how the business goes. They can go up and then they can go down, but mostly they go up. So a person like a Travis Scott will never deal with you at this stage because they get controlled by the majors. Live Nation works with Evenco, AEG. These are the big guys that control all of that. So then they lock these artists down. They do these deals where they advance a lot of money to them, and you lose them. And it's a guy like a Travis Scott. When I did him in Montreal, when I brought him here.
Okay, how long ago was this when you brought him?
About 2 years now, maybe about
so
that.
You just
Last year, and when I brought him last year, he was $10,000, and now he's like $150,000, $200,000. You know what I mean? So it's a totally different. This is mortgage money, bro.
Yeah, but now are they doing the back end deals?
Yeah. There's, like I said, okay. The least popular you are, they take more what's called a flat deal. A flat deal is they pay you $10,000, whether I make money or not, it's on you. But they always want to know what you made. So that way the next time that artist comes true, they will determine if they're going to do a flat deal with you or not again. Then you have what's called, it's called back-end deals. There's basically two of them. You have a promoter's profit, where you do what's called an 85-15 split with the guarantee. So the guarantee, like say for example, you paid Travis Scott $10,000. They want to see your whole budget. They want to see your gross. So say that the show grossed 100,000, the budget was 50,000, you have $50,000 left. Well, then they allow you to take 15%, right, off the 50,000. Then whatever's left over, you split with the artist 85-15. So he gets 85 and you get another 15, plus his guarantee, which is already in the 50,000. So that's how it works. That's one. And then you get even worse deals than that where you can get like a Michael Jackson deal. Michael Jackson's 95.5. Versus deal, no 15%. There's no promoter's profit. There's none of that. No. It's 5%. That's it. You know, there's some artists you get 90 versus deal 90%. So they take 90% of the gate. And these are artists, basically you're like rolling your money. You know, it's not like you have to worry about, oh man, am I going to lose my money? Am I going to lose my money? You know, no, you're going to get your money. Because these artists are pretty much guaranteed to deliver in terms of bringing people into the room. The only thing you have to do is put the money up.
So another thing I want to touch on about concert promotion that I learned at a young age, I call it the Coolio effect. So I remember Rickey D brought me into the Coolio show. His video was playing all over Music Plus. His song was playing all over radio. We got the radios involved. They were playing commercials. And no one showed up.
Yeah, I coined that term, the Coolio effect. I remember that.
So nowadays, when you gauge how an artist will do in Montreal, so before, whether an artist did well in the U.S. or in Toronto, doesn't mean he's going to do well here. Is it the same thing?
Well, of course. You know, I just had a cancellation last week that I had to do for the underachievers in Ottawa. They sold 47 tickets. I ended up losing $5,000 US plus all my marketing that I invested into because they did 47 tickets. So if I was going to do this show, I would have maybe lost 10, 12,000. So, you know, where do you stop the bleeding, right? Do you chop it here or do you chop it down there? But you know what? You're going to bleed. So figure out what you want to do. It's not a question of pride. It's just a question of economics. It just comes down to that, and it has to make sense. And I ended up, you know, doing that. And with the Coolio thing, you know, Coolio he was charting everywhere. He was top on the videos. He was top in radio. But the problem with Coolio here is that basically you had two communities. You had the black community and the white community. White community thought he was too volatile, so therefore they didn't want to come. The black community thought he was too soft, so they didn't come. So both of them canceled out each other, and we were sitting there with an empty room. And I think after that show was the last show
that's the last show.
You decided to
I'm out. I couldn't handle it. Like,
for me,
it's crazy. Because, you know, a lot of people don't know, but, you know, like sometimes you got to put out money like for 5 shows up front, and you got to live, and then you're losing money, you're winning money. Talk us also about agents that force you to take shows.
Oh, I remember one time I got, what was the show now that I got that? It was with Everlast and that guy Serge something, he's a heavy metal guy.
Heineken.
Huh?
Serge from Serge Heineken.
Yeah, what's his group?
System of a Down.
System of a Down.
Okay.
Well, I got System of a Down and knew nothing about them.
Okay.
And the agent started screaming on the phone, saying, "Take the show! It's gonna sell out! Take it!" And we're like, well, me and Gary were sitting there like going, who's this guy? We know Everlast, right? Because of House of Pain and everything. And he was like the precursor to Eminem. It was, you know, him, and then Eminem came out. Eminem sort of kind of took his slot, but he was that guy being set up on that level there. And we got that show. We had no clue. The agent screamed at us, said, "Take it." And we took the show and we sold it out.
Wow.
And I had no clue. I didn't even stay for it because I didn't know what that music was. I stayed for Eminem. And then I heard it and I was like, yo, what's this?
Stay for Everlast.
Yeah, for Everlast. We sold it for Everlast. Well, I also did Eminem also. I brought Eminem here the first time. Man, shout out to Gary T again, to Perry, to 514, to Daniel and them. And we did at University of Montreal. And it was a fantastic show.
Yeah, I remember that show. I was hosting that show.
My partners were scared. He didn't want to take no pictures with nobody but me.
I got a picture of him in proof.
Yeah, you must have got one in at Off the Hook when he went to Off the
No,
Hook.
I got one that day.
Oh,
I
you're
remember
good
when Eminem, he had canceled all the interviews.
Exactly.
And I was there anyways, hosting the show. And then at the end, the record
He
label
was
says,
cool, man. He was cool.
okay, Malik, M's ready for your interview. I just ran backstage, did my
You're
interview,
lucky.
got my picture with proof.
Nobody else got it.
No one else got it. That was one of the first ever interviews.
Pumped off on my
in Canada,
partners.
yeah.
Pumped off my partners and everything.
First interview in Quebec.
It was a trip, you know. So, you know, I had a lot of great memories. I remember one time with Naughty by Nature and Tretch and Gary T were fighting in the hotel lobby, and I had to break that up. Tretch thought because he was a big boy that he was going to push up on Gary, and let me tell you, that was a battle royale right there if there was ever one.
Remember, Tretch took all that clothes and promised. What happened was, these guys had brought down Tretch from Naughty by Nature to do a show, and they brought him up to go get some clothes. And Tretch took boxes of clothes and promised the man that he's going to be on. What show was it? It was like
I can't remember, man.
It was a late night show. He promised he's going to be wearing the clothes. Tretch never wore the clothes.
Well, Eminem did the same thing, came to Off the Hook, and he cleaned it out. He cleaned out Off the Hook also, came up there in the early days. So there was, you know, these are some of the things. So now I sit up there and I look at the future of hip hop.
What's the future, Rick?
And I see the present and I see the future. You know, basically, now it's about really choosing the right artists. It's not about any time. Now it's harder to take the chances because there's a lot of hit and misses. And if you don't get the artists at the right amount, you can lose a lot of money.
But then you have a lot of young rookies that are overbidding, killing the market.
Yes. But you know, you can never. Unfortunately, it's a business that's not unionized. You don't need a license. Anybody with a bag of money can step in there and do what they got to do, which is great because you know it's open. It's as open as it can be. So it gives great opportunities if you know what you're doing and you're disciplined and focused. Then you can succeed and you can last as long as I have.
Let's talk about your relationship with Wu-Tang.
Oh, Wu-Tang.
Wu-Tang is special. Remember the show? We had this event, the show. They had done a soundtrack for a movie, and we were going to sell out. And then something happened. Was it Virginia or something?
Yeah.
And they're on the run, so they couldn't come to Canada. And we lost our money again. I got stung.
Yeah. And then I worked on them, and then a couple of years ago, I was able to bring up some of the members of the Wu-Tang, and that was a disaster. Like, it was...
They don't really talk to each other either.
Yeah, it was really bad. It was like one of the... Wu-Tang has a lot of beefs within the organization. A lot of them don't like RZA and RZA's brother because they feel that, you know, like, I'll give you an example. When Method Man and Raekwon and Ghostface does a show, they have to pay royalties
Wu-Tang.
to Wu-Tang, to the brothers. And yet they feel that they all built Wu-Tang together. But because they were young and naive, they didn't understand the business side, and these guys exploited that and therefore ended up owning the brand. Like you see the Wu-Tang logo is done by a guy named DJ Mathematics.
Yeah.
This is the DJ.
Okay.
He designed that logo, which is almost as iconic as, say, Apple.
Yeah, Apple.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
And yet he receives no royalties from that.
Yeah.
But because he's you know, he DJs for them, they give him DJ gigs, and, you know, he's taken care of, but he's not taking care of the way he's supposed to.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of beef between each other, and what happened the last Wu-Tang show, a buddy of mine booked the show, paid them $25,000. They ran a game where they said, yeah, you can book the Wu-Tang Clan, but you're booking the name the Wu-Tang Clan. Doesn't mean that the artists within the Wu-Tang Clan will show up, right? So they tried to sell us that. Well, they sold it to him, and then he came to me, and I said, what? So there was no Method Man, there was no Ghostface, there was only Expected Deck, was some of the guys that, not the key guys, right?
Yeah.
So,
The hustle,
I'm like, you sent this guy $25,000 US, and you didn't do your homework. You know, it's the guy from Olympia. He was like, oh, Ricky.
He don't know about hip hop. He don't know about hip hop.
He doesn't know, right? So I'm like, all right, cool. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to individually contract each artist, and I'm going to pay them directly. That 25 grand that homie got there, the agent, he's going to take a portion of that and he's going to give it to
Each artist.
money. Okay? So I was able to neutralize his money. And then I went and I got each artist individually, contracted them out, paid them directly. And that's how I was able to get my show. Which then the Riz and them called me and basically said, you know, that's effed up what you did. And I said to them, no, that's effed up what you did. And I said, I got you. and he never talked to me. He never talked to me after that, right? And then we did the show. There was a huge ice storm in Montreal and in New York. I got most of the guys, but I didn't get Method. But I paid Method $25,000 in advance because he wasn't going to come without that. So now he has my money. He doesn't show up to that show, but he shows up to the Toronto show the next day because Toronto didn't have the ice storm, right? So he owes me a show, right? I paid them guy the money. Yeah, I'm going to give you the show. I'm going to give you the show. I'm going to give you the show. Calling, this and that. We're working out the dates. I'm calling, they're working out the dates. That's what they're saying to me. No show's coming, right?
You got your money.
So now I got my money, right? So he thinks that I'm stupid now. I'm going to leave it up there. And then Patrick, my partner at Olympia, said, Ricky, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I said, don't worry, we're going to get them. So now Redman is going on tour. So I said to Red and them, yo, I'll give you extra money if you bring down Method.
Yeah.
So he said, okay. So I gave him $5,000 more than what he was supposed to get for that show.
He's happy.
Now I go and I promote Method and Red. Now Method's mad. Because now Method can't screw his boy. So he has to come. So he comes and he's talking to me, you know, what the, I'm on the phone going, yeah, okay. And then Patrick looks at me and says, brilliant move. Got him on the stage, they did the show, here's your debt, done.
Yeah.
So that's how I was able to get it back. But anybody else would have lost that money.
Yeah. That's the Rickey D hustle.
But that's street knowledge. That's understanding what you're dealing with and understanding the environment, you know what I mean? Because most people would have just gave up on that 25 and call it a day, you know?
Not Rickey D.
No, hell no. You know what that does for my family? You're crazy. I got a family. I can't let that go down.
Rickey D wants his make on you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, this is part of it. You know, a lot of people in Montreal, the days have changed, you know. The days of entitlements is over. We have to all work together to fill these rooms. Back in the day, I wouldn't need an opening act to sell a ticket. I wouldn't need an opening act. But I give these opening acts an opportunity to get on stage because the Evenkos and the Neons and all of these other cats never put on opening acts.
True.
They only put you on when you reach a certain plateau, if you're like Hart Street or you're Kate Trinanda or something like that, where they can see there's the potential to exploit you. But if you're not anything, they're not even going to look at you. So, but at the same token, right, they have the money that if they do take a hit, they can survive the hits. Where me, you know, I work at the hospital still. I've been there since 1988. Same time I started CKUT.
Yeah.
I started CKUT in 1988. I got in the show. I was going to McGill. It was my first year at McGill. And my buddy Fabian at that time wanted a show on there because you had a popular hip hop show called the Sound Supreme Show. And he wanted the show. And I ended up being the first late night show at CKUT because CKUT used to stop at 12 midnight. 12 till like maybe 6 or 7 in the morning or 7 in the morning. They had no programming.
So your show, just let people know, your show is called Sound of Soul. It's basically Monday at midnight. Or Sunday
Monday morning
at midnight.
at midnight, and but originally I had the choice of whatever time slot I wanted after midnight. I had the choice of that, and I took Sunday mornings because at that time Fabian and myself, well, more Fabian was playing in a club called Business, and he wanted to do an open late night thing after the clubs. When you're driving home, you can listen to him play. So I went in and I was playing the cassettes until he arrived after the show. We started from 2 to 7.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 2 in the morning till 7 in the morning. And eventually Fabian started to fade, right? You know, oh, here's the cassettes, you go in. And they would never show up. So I'm there now playing the cassettes and learning the thing. And then I ended up getting this show with him and a guy named Sean Clark and another guy named Jeff.
Okay.
Jeffrey Rhodes. And they were the host. And then they got into a huge fight. They had, this one guy had 2 like girlfriends show up at the station at the same time. So it was a battle royale and records were flying all over the place. So then they called me on the Monday CKUT and they said, listen, we're about to can this show. And I said, well, I wasn't there, I was sick. Thank God I wasn't there, I was sick, had the flu.
Yeah.
So that saved the show. So then all of them were gone. Fabian basically was starting to remove himself because I guess he didn't want to be in the late night anymore. So I started to take over the show. But he would supply the music. And then at the end of the, going towards 6 or 7 in the morning, I was playing slow music. Right? And then after that, I did that for a couple of years while I was at McGill. And then I gave it to a guy named Tony DeSegres, who did this thing called Utopia Paradise. He continued, and continued that for many years. After that, I then moved over to the Sunday, and I was doing my show on the Sunday.
You still have your show, Sound of Soul?
Yeah, I do every second week. I have DJ V-Mine and Tash for the last maybe 5 years. Because I'm tired.
Yeah, he's tired.
I can't get up every, I love it, and that's why I continue. And it's a great opportunity to play some great music and give people an opportunity to hear some good R&B, which is very hard to find on radio these days. Well, it's always been the case. Hip-hop, reggae, there's a ton of it. If you're talking R&B, talking slow jams, talking soul music, hard to find.
So you've been on CKUT for 29 years, right?
About that, since 1988.
Give him a hand. 29 years. And he's volunteering, people. He doesn't get paid. He volunteers his time to get up there. Let's talk about the influence that CKUT had on hip-hop and urban music in Montreal.
Huge.
Let's talk about it.
Huge. Like, they were, other than AM, Club 980, which Butcher T started off, thank God for him, It was huge because eventually AM started to fade, poor quality, spotty to get, and FM started to develop in the mid-80s. And CKUT was there at that moment because commercial radio wasn't giving us any opportunities. They still don't to this day. Every now and then they might have dabbled a little bit here and there. You know, they used to do their 15 minutes of, I'm like, yo, what's that? You know, that kind of retarded stuff. But CKUT was critical because it was the first station that spawned all these other community stations that you have today in the city that play that type of music.
True.
Because there was no outlet for that. There was, you know, like, where were you able to hear it? Either in the clubs, at a blocko. Blocko was like music in the park. People used to set up, you know, speakers or DJs, and they used to play in the park. Or on people's ghetto blasters, huge tape recorders, which they had recorded music when they went to New York, or they bought cassettes from the local record stores here that had them. So it was, you know, that's just the way it went, you know.
At one point, you needed, you know, when you were doing parties, you had to have a commercial running on CKUT.
Yeah, well, you know, listen, we needed to support the station. The station was supporting us. They were giving us a vehicle in order for us to drive. You know, unfortunately, we weren't able to graduate. You know, at one time there was a lot of creative struggle going in CKUT because, you know, the music that we represented was just so popular. It was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So the demands became greater and greater. But, you know, CKUT was able to hold its uniqueness by, you know, offering other fledgling musics a platform, which, you know, when I think about it now, was very courageous of them, because at that time, the wave was real. You know, they were going to get overwhelmed by hip hop, urban music, and all these other smaller independent sounds would have never been heard or ceased to have a platform. You know, just like hip hop was one of those, but, you know, eventually grew bigger and bigger every day, you know what I mean?
I also want to send a big shout out to Louise Burns, because she's always been behind urban music.
Been there a long time.
Yeah. And always open-minded, and we appreciate that.
You know, so, you know, CKUT was there, and, you know, from there you had the CINQs, the CISMs, CIBLs, you know, all these other stations started to come out, the K103s, you know, all these stations came and was spawned off of that station. That station helped to bring the music to the masses in the city. You know, obviously with social media now and your ability to listen worldwide, you know, it's lost its importance on that level, but it's still relevant in terms of the platform is still there for those who want to listen. Where, you know, at one time, it was everything.
Yeah.
You know, now with, you know, the future hip hop now and where it's going, you know, we're becoming so heavily dependent on social media that we're literally becoming slaves of it. And, you know, a lot of people are starting to get turned off of social media because they realize how it's taken away other creative elements. You know, we've lost local radio, in my opinion. We lost newspapers, you know, which at one time I used to enjoy picking up a Montreal Mirror or Au revoir and checking out the ads, checking out the articles. You know, we've lost that. We've become an environment where we post something on social media hoping that we get 5 likes. And it's sad, it's pathetic. And then you have all these other people that haven't really put any kind of investment into it, who think that they understand how to promote, and they'll go and they got, you know, 200 friends or 1,000 friends, and all of a sudden now they're promoters. And,
a lot of stuff.
But they won't go and they won't hand out a flyer. They won't go and meet their people. They won't do anything of that nature. They just become hidden behind the clique. And they think that that's all it takes in order to be successful in that. Unfortunately, a lot of them are getting banged out in the equation because they're not interested in, taking it to that next level. And going out there and putting a real investment into their product.
So listen, Rick, we only have 20 minutes left.
Okay.
I want to take some questions or some comments. You have a question?
I have a question.
You stand up. Let's talk a little louder. Your name, please?
Sure. My name's Shereen.
How you doing, Trudy?
Hey. Yeah. So thank you so much. This has been really exciting
Thank
to hear
you.
all
You're
these
welcome.
stories.
Thank you.
And I was listening to you talk about Evenco and these people coming in, and I'm wondering whether you have any artists from before that still feel loyal to you, and whether they do feel kind of more committed to community than to going with a group like Evenco. Has the music industry changed so much and the setup changed so much that even if they do feel that loyalty or that sense of community that's more important to them, can they still kind of work with you rather than with these other people? Is that even possible? So I'm just wondering how it's set up these days and if you've got artists like that.
Well, if you're talking from a local perspective, they have no choice but to work with me. Because it's either me or nothing. Because they will not get a platform whatsoever. And if you look at models of Evenco and everything, me, I'm hip hop. So I'll mess with the metal rap, I'll mess with the underground rap, I'll mess with the pop rap. I'm gonna mess with them all. They have a certain box. And if you fit in that box, you're good. But that box is not big. So they like more of the hipster guys, the ones with the skinny jeans. They don't like the guys who are kind of a little bit more rugged in their demeanor, that are lyrically inclined. They're looking for a clean, generic, sanitized look. And that's pretty much what they like. I, on the other hand, like them all. I like them all. I just do. I will listen to, a Smoke Perp, which is a new artist, and then I'll go and I'll listen to a Biggie, or I'll go and I'll listen to a Big Daddy Kane, or a House of Pain. And I just don't listen to black artists, I listen to white artists. I'll listen to an Arabic artist, as long as I understand what they're saying, I'll listen to it, right? So that's the difference. They don't give the opportunities to them. Where I do, but unfortunately, I don't have the marketing means and muscle that I don't need the support of the local artists to go out there and bring people, because I'll give an example. When I was growing up doing this business, I could have went to the colleges and handed out flyers. I could have went to the shows, the concerts. I could have went to the movies. Now you can't even go to the cégeps. You can't go to the universities anymore because of all the violence that's occurred. So they basically closed those doors. So you don't have those avenues anymore. So everything becomes email blasts, social media, influencers. Influencers is the new thing now. Somebody builds up a certain amount of likes on their fan pages or whatever, and you go to them and you either pay them or give them a ticket, and they in turn do that. But a lot of artists now don't have that. I'm one of the few guys that do, but there's a trade-off. It's not going to be, well, I'm going to put you on my show and you're not going to help me because I need your help. That's the difference. They don't need your help. They have the Canadians, they have that check coming in. They're cool. You know what I mean? Or me, I work at a hospital. You come and see me. That's where I was today. That's why I was late. Because at the end of the day, I got to feed my family. And it's all about that. I have no shame in my game. I go and I do what I got to do. If this promotion game would have taken care of me, maybe I wouldn't even be here today, B. But God willing, I'm here because I put the sweat equity in on it. But that's how it works, and it's sad because some of these guys truly deserve the opportunity to be on some of those stages, but they're not interested in doing it.
Do you have any other questions or comments? Anyone who worked with Rickey D would like to make a comment? Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, what is the biggest, most recent shows that you put on, and how was it to deal with the management and all that?
Well, what was the biggest? I did quite a few last year. This year, the biggest one was TI. It was one of the biggest ones I did this year.
About that, because I know one of the guys that opened, and did you pick the openers or?
Yeah, again, sometimes what we do with the openers, it all depends on their level. I have a thing of nothing is given, everything has to be earned. So if you're an opening act, an aspiring rapper, okay, or an artist, and you want to get on some of these stages, you need to build your base. You need to build your fan base so we can, because there's a cost, right? You go on that stage. When I go to a Club Soda or I go to Olympia, I got to pay rent, I got to pay security by the hour, I got to pay technicians by the hour. It gets very costly. So when you, and then, if you're dealing with opening acts, and they have a rider, they want guest lists, they want to do a sound check, it gets demanded. And then when you ask them to promote it on their page, you ask them to, they don't do it. They're lazy, they figure that they're owed something, when in fact nobody owes you nothing. Because if that was the case, then I would literally have the keys to the city and I'd be working at an Evenco or something like that. But as you can see, there's no level of entitlement. You have to go out there and earn whatever you're supposed to get, whether it's with them or without them. So you if you're an up and coming artist and you want to get out there, build your fan base. Because when you build your fan base, that's when you have power. And when you have power, you can get a lot faster than when you don't, looking for favors. And that's the difference. That's the difference between a guy who wants a favor with power and a guy who has no power but wants a favor. There's a difference on that.
Thank you.
Did I answer it? Did I?
Well, one part.
Okay, what was the other part?
the TI. How did you get TI?
How did I get TI? The same way I just told you before. Phone calls, agents get to know you, they get to trust you, they know, because it's a trust game, right? They don't want to go and give you an artist that you're going to mess up, because then that burns them with the artist in their management, and they will never want to work with them again. So they have to make sure whoever they give the show to is capable of delivering the show the night of. If they think that you're not capable, then they're not going to give it to you. But you have different agents who have what I call, different degrees, varying degrees of, will they give it to you or not. If you go and you make some ridiculous offer that's like, 50% higher than what they're receiving, well, let me tell you, they're going to give it to you. Will you deliver? They're going to hope and pray you do. But most of the time they won't, because they're scared that that one show might cost them maybe hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in sales for the company that they represent, because that artist no longer wants to deal with them anymore. So, the last few big shows I did last year, I did Rust, I did Flatbush Zombies, I did Toy Lanes, I did Chronics, Maitre Gibbs from Paris, I Am. This year, Tech 9. I was going to do the Underachievers, but they didn't do well. I did this artist named Necro. I did this other artist named Jedi Mind Tricks. I can't remember all of them. Freddie Gibbs. Yeah, thank you. I can't remember all the shows. I do so many shows sometimes. But again, right, you have to keep working. And you got to make those phone calls. You got to be on them. Sometimes it's tiring to always make those phone calls and deal with it. But that's the nature of the business that we're in. And sometimes the agents will give you a show or two. Not all the time. Like now I'm trying to get UZ Vert. I'm trying to get some of these new rappers, Lil Yachty. I'm trying to get some of these new guys. I'm working on a House of Pain show for the 20th anniversary. Black Dot from The Roots, working on him. So these are the kind of shows that I enjoy a lot. Necro I enjoyed, it was a great show, and he was a wonderful guy. Jedi Mind Tricks, same thing. I like to do more R&B, but it's, right now, especially with the new R&B, like the SZAs and the Daniel Caesars and them, I can't get them because they're grabbing them. Where at one time, these shows would have went to me. They would have went to me, I would have took them to a certain level, and then they would have took them over and moved it to the next level after that, because then by that time, I couldn't afford them. They go into, more than 2,000 people capacity rooms, When you're doing like, say, 5,000 people, like a Kendrick Lamar is like a $350,000 artist, plus a percentage of the gate, Drake is like 2-3 million. Like, it's retarded. You can't even like look at these guys. Just forget them. Yeah, just put them to the side and deal with the new guys until they become unreachable.
So Rick, let's take another question. Any other questions? Ta question?
Yeah, we have a question from Facebook Live.
Facebook Live. Okay.
So it's what advice would you give to young artists doing their own promotion for their shows on the local Montreal scene as of now?
They have to put the work in. They have to go out there and meet their people. It's not just about having a great record. A great record does help, right? But there's a lot of artists now, with the advent of new technology, anybody can put out a great record, great sounding record. The difference is building your fan base locally. These people become your endorsed level. Because you're only, in hip-hop, especially in hip-hop, you're only as good as your hood. That's why you see in hip-hop, everybody's always repping for, I'm from Montreal, no, I'm from Little Burgundy, I'm from Brooklyn, I'm from Compton, because it matters. You see? So, if you would have went and heard about Kendrick Lamar before he became that guy, and you would have went to Compton, somebody would have told you there that they rate him, right? Because he put the work in locally before he went outside of his neighborhood. But you have to build your base here. You have to go out there and build them one by one, and then you have to organize them into a unit. And these are the people that are going to help you. When I was doing parties, I had a base at that time of 150 to 200 people. No matter what I did, what kind of parties, they were coming. Now I start grabbing this promoter, grabbing that, doing this concert, going to this location. I would go from 2 to 2,000 people. That's how real it was. But I knew I had that base. Obviously, my base has eroded a lot as a party promoter because I've gotten older. And the crowd that used to come up with me in colleges and universities are now the mothers and fathers. Some of them are grandparents. Some of them are great-grandparents. So, you know what I mean? So, it's sad to say, but some of them are. But, and they just went to that next level. So, for all those out there, build your base. Have great music. Get it out there. But most importantly, you need to go and connect with the people who are going to support you.
All right. Any other questions or comments in the back?
Mr. D.
Yes.
First of all, thank you very much for keeping it real on the stage and really letting it out. I'm feeling reserved. I wanted to ask you a question about whether while you were grinding
one-man army, and as I was on my journey, walking down the road, at certain points, I ran into people. Some of them fell off real fast. Some of them continued a little bit more, but none of them stayed the whole way. Because I was determined and I was passionate. You got to remember, this gave me confidence. This gave me hope that I can be something more than what people thought I should be. So for me, this is what made me continue to do what I do. Nothing else. You know, so some people are in it for the money, some people are in it for the passion, some people are in it for both. I'm in it for both. I still enjoy getting up and taking something from nothing and building it into something that, you know, it's like I have, you know, no offense, sweetie, but I have multiple children that I've helped to create throughout the years. Some have gone on to be superstars. And some of them, you don't even know who they are, you know? But I helped mourn them all. And I've watched them come from nothing to something. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say that I'm a driven individual. I would say that, and I work with other persons that are equally driven, and we see each other at different times and different places. And I think a lot of when I think of promotions, I can only see your head and your vision in my head, right? And I wanted to ask, what was the highest vision you have for not only just promoting in Montreal, putting on great events and allowing artists a platform to be able to shine and put Montreal forth, like let's say Chicago or California or New York. What is it that you would want to see? What do you see if the right things are in place? And how would you add into that? What would you put into that?
I'm not sure I understand where you're going with that. Just say it one more time, but just...
You want to ask how does he unite the culture to be at that level like Chicago?
I apologize for not being clear. Basically, I'm saying like you've seen the promotion go up to where you are right now. And I would say that you are the standard, that your work ethic for something to achieve, right? And for it to grow further than what you have brought on is sometimes when you live in a generation, you want the generation to bring it on further than what you've done. What is your vision for that, and what would you do to help that to get there if you believe that you have individuals around you?
Well, I basically took hip-hop to where I needed to take it to. I'm at the last leg of a relay race, a 4x4. So I got a few more moves in me before I hit that finish line. And and hopefully I will inspire other young individuals to carry it on in some way. It's not an easy business that I'm in. It's a whorish business. It's a business where some people are loyal, but most are not. But you have to just believe in yourself and believe in what you need to do and continue to carry the torch in what manner you can. Unfortunately, I've tried to take on people throughout the years to mentor them, but I felt that the majority of them were just in it to get a number. You see what I mean? Like, they just wanted to get the artist's number. They wanted to get the manager's number. They wanted to get the agent's number. They weren't interested in really learning the business, but they were just interested in trying to bag a number so they think they can go ahead and do the show because they think they got it figured out. So they hadn't really put the work in. So when I start to see things like that, I just get rid of them because they're not interested in putting the work in. Before I started making the calls for many years, I trust my partners back then to make those calls because I wasn't ready to make those calls. And once I established myself and I got myself into a position where I felt comfortable at doing it because for whatever reason they decided they didn't want to do it anymore. They were uninterested. Then I started making the calls. And still to this day, you know, I get a lot of shows that doesn't necessarily come from just me. I'll have somebody else call me, hey Ricky, I got this show, you want to jump in? You know, it's like a small community of us. It's very small, but you know, that are willing to take those risks because it's a very risky business. You have to have confidence and you have to be able to evaluate what you're about to do. A lot of people go out there, they got stars in their eyes, but their feet are not on the ground. Or their feet is on the ground and they lack no imagination. So you need to be able to temper both and balance them. You can have a little bit of both, but you can't be like this, you can't be like that. You got to be around the middle and let either one of them guide you depending on where you need to go.
So Rickey D, we got 60 seconds left. Do you have any last words?
Well, like I said, I thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it. I appreciate CKUT doing this. I was flattered and honored and a bit shy because, this business that I'm in, show business that I'm in, when I first started, I never thought it would take me this far. When I was going to university, it was more of a hobby. When I got out of university, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was confused, and I went to what I knew, and that was this. And it's, taken me this far throughout my life that I'm here at this moment where, I feel that I had something to say, and CKUT recognized it. I'd like to thank you, Shaheed, for being a part of my journey along the way. And, you've been instrumental. He's been one of those guys who's not only a friend, but he's my little brother, and he's been there for me along the way doing his thing.
My pleasure.
So, and I appreciate everybody who's taking the time, from some of my heroes, from Butcher T was, being one of them, Gary T being another, Perry being another, Keith and Karen being another. I've watched guys like Sterling Downey and these guys coming up, bringing hip hop even further into the various communities and helping to ignite it. I've watched, some of the DJs, like some of my favorite DJs right now for hip hop. He's one of them, Pro V. I listen to his show every week. He's super good. And I was happy with the reason I had him on because he's one of my favorites because he just locks into that quintessential New York sound of hip hop, which to me is what I grew up on and it's what endears me the most. And, I thank my family, my daughter, my wife, my son was unfortunately, my son is working at McDonald's. Imagine that, 17 years old, started at McDonald's, 15 and a half. He's working, he's going to school, and he's learning the ethics of putting in the work. Even though he doesn't really need to do it, we will take care of him. But he's putting in the work, and I got to give him that on that. Because he said, Dad, I got to work. I said, you're not going to come and hear me talk. He said, Dad, I hear you talk all the time. I said, okay, you go do your thing. So, go ahead.
So Rick, we have one more question
Go ahead.
from one of your longtime fans.
All right.
I'm at Alan. What's going on, Alan? So good?
Just a comment on the whole Sybil bit.
Yes.
You were wondering the year,
Okay.
and the year is the '89 on Attic Records
Okay.
and Champion Records if you're UK.
There you go.
All
See,
right.
he knows better than I do. I did like CC Peniston at that time. I was doing a lot of house music. Robin S. I was one of the first straight promoters to start doing things like KOX in the gay community with Robin S. I was fearless. You got to be fearless if you want to be in this business. Can't be stupid and go off a cliff, because nobody can fly. But I was fearless. I went wherever I needed to go to get it done, and that's very important. And I hope that hip hop continues, and I hope that if somebody in this room can continue it, or their friends can, and you can inspire them to continue, because at the end of the day, as much as the majors are coming into it, they're going to come a time where they're going to rinse it all true, like they've done with all the other music. They've done it with indie rock, they've done it with rock, they've done it with pop. Now they're doing it with hip hop. But there's going to come a time they're going to get tired, and they're going to move on to the next flavor. And hopefully by that time, individuals like yourselves who put in the work will be able to get it back. They'll come back to those who are supposed to come, back to its home. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. God bless everybody. And thank you for taking your time and sharing this.
I want to thank also Archive Montreal, Canadian Heritage, and CKUT for making this event possible. Art Gang, thank you very much, Art Gang. And
Art Gang, yeah.
If you want more information on Rickey D, visit rickeydevents.com.
RickeyDevents.com, RICKEY events with an S.com.
All right, thank you, Ricky. Always a pleasure.